I'm Betty Voght. Actually, I'm Anne Elizabeth, but I've always been called Betty. And I grew up in Hancock. I was born at home on December 29th, 1924. And I lived in that same house until I was in high school. And then we moved next door, and so didn't move very far. And I graduated from Hancock High School in 1942 and went to work at the telephone office locally. No car in our house, no telephone in our house. And that was a requirement, not the car, but the telephone. So my dad said, no, there'll be no telephone in this house. And my mother said, oh, yes, there will. And so we had to have the phone so they could call us. And I worked there for probably 3 or 4 years. Well, first I worked there only a short time, and the war was on. 1942, the war started. And I went down to Sault Ste. Marie for the telephone office and worked there just for 3 months. They brought in a lot of operators because there was a Army air base there because of the Sioux logs. But I was lonesome and came back home to Houghton and back to the telephone office. And I stayed there and worked until I got married. And that was to a Houghton boy, and so I only moved not too far, across the river. And we didn't have a car. And neither did his parents, so it was, you hoofed it wherever you went, or you did take the bus. I was with another gal from the telephone office, and we were going back from work over to Hancock, and at the end of the bridge, these two fellas that she knew and I didn't were standing there going to come this way to Houghton, and we stopped to talk, and one was Bill Voght, and he had a sports jacket on that looked nice, and he had a really nice looking tie on, and I said to him, I really like your tie. It was so nice, and that just really flattered him, and he wanted to know if I wanted to go out. And then he said, well, I got to work over the week, so maybe next week I'll give you a call. And I thought, oh, he won't call me, but he did. And we went to actually Carnival was in Hancock, and we went to the Carnival. And did start dating after that. He had been going with another girl from the telephone office, so it was a little strange at first, but I guess she figured that was the way it was, this other girl. So after we were married, we lived in an apartment downtown, and the house near where his parents lived came up for sale. It was an apartment house, and Bill decided to try to buy that, so he and his dad got together and arranged some loans, and we moved from an apartment there to an apartment in that house, which was really big. There were 6 other apartments in there. And it was a new experience for me. Well, I was new for Bill too, but he fell right in love with having apartment houses. And from there we moved to another one later, and so we had 2 apartment houses, and we had another one. And it was his dad's favorite saying was, they saw you coming, Bill, because no one else would buy it. Most of them needed a lot of fixing up, but he was a hard worker, and he did fix them all up, and so that was another way of making some income for having a big family. So the other thing I would say, and it was hard to even imagine now that my husband was chauvinistic in a way. I mean, he did not do any. He'd always talk about doing the cooking or doing that, but he never did. He'd like to eat at the camp, and I'd say, no, I'm not going to haul all this out there, and I'll fix it, I'll haul it, and no, I could see that wasn't going to happen either. But he was very good about seeing that the kids had what they needed, made sure that, we had enough money to do that, and then but when we talked about college, he thought, because I had 5 girls, he said they didn't need to go to college because they would get married anyway, and they didn't need to go to college, they'd just get a job. And I said, no, if they want to and can, they're going to go to college. And all 5 of them did go to college. Some of it wasn't easy, but they did it, and all 5 of them got degrees. And the 3 boys went 1 year to Tech each, and they just did not want college, and none of them went. My daughter asked me about that one time. She said, how did you feel? How did that happen, that they didn't go to... I said, I don't know. That's just... Well, I mean, I tried to get them to do more than that, but that's all they wanted of it. They didn't, and they all were more, like my youngest, who was just here a little while ago, he is in Marquette, and he did go to college for a while and got a degree so he could work for their power and light company down there. And but Ed is a carpenter, and his sons are both carpenters, and Paul was in an office, but he didn't. Oh, okay. My mother came over from Ireland, and when she was, let's see, she came in 1901, and so she was probably 19 then. And my dad came from Scotland. I don't know how old he was, but they met here. And my mother did always tell me that I didn't know what hard work was, because when she came here, she came because she had an aunt that lived here. Her father's sister lived here with her family, and she had a boarding and rooming house, and she had, I don't know how many roomers, but she would board like 12 or 14 miners, so they ate there. And so this big part of my mother's work was getting meals on the table, doing laundry, and the sort of things you do to keep a house moving. And then she saved everything. She did get some money for doing some of this, but she also got a place to live. And then when she got her first sewing machine, she started to go out doing sewing for people, and so she was a dressmaker, or she could make anything that people wanted for their house. My dad was a laborer. He was what they called a longshoreman, and he worked in the summers on the coal boats when they would come in, and they called them coal heavers because what happened is the clam would go down and pick up the coal in the middle of the boat, and when it came up and dumped it on the wharf, then while that was going up and moving, they would shovel the coal into the center again, so that when it came down, it would get a good-sized clam full and go up. And at night, when they would be doing that, I lived right across the river from them, and I could hear the of the boat, of the clam going up and dumping. It would put you to sleep, kind of thing. When I went over there with my husband, we went to Europe, and then we stopped in Ireland and Scotland on the way back. And in Ireland, both places I got to see where my parents were born, and what they lived in. They were just foundations then. And when I visited with some cousins, they were talking about marry this and marry that. And all of a sudden my husband looked at me and he said, "You don't know, they're talking about your mother." I never heard my mother called Mary or Aunt Mary. We didn't have any relatives, so I never called anybody Aunt this or Aunt that. And I never heard my dad called Uncle Jim or Jim. So it was really strange when they were talking about her, because she had gone back a couple of years before we went there, and they were talking about her visit there, and I didn't know they were talking about her. Oh, the maypole dance? The kindergarten teacher taught us this. It was over a long period of time. It'd be one of the things that we would do maybe 2 or 3 times a week, because it was a lot of effort, and she had to have someone play the piano so she could work with us. And what you did was stand around this maypole, with all the streamers hanging down, and then you would walk in and take a streamer and back out so that they were all away from the pole then. And you would sing a little song, and you would go in and out, they called it the window, in and out the window, and you would walk in and back out and do that a couple times. Then you would turn and start. The boys would go one way and the girls would go the other, And they'd say go in and out the window, and you would go under his thing and out around, and then under the next boy's thing, and you'd be twisting that on the maypole until it was almost, you were almost right next to the pole because everything was wound down there. Then you would turn and undo it again. Now if you dropped your cord, you just had to get out of it because they couldn't fit you in there again, so you would have to go sit down. But I was always able to hang there, and most of the time we did a very good job. You know, she did a lot of work with us, and it would be fun. There was a big hill and then a railroad track, and then some more land, and then the lake. But we could go, when a boat would go through, a big boat, and they went through constantly, you could go on the top of the hill, so to speak, and if you would yell, someone would come out and wave. And same with the trains. I don't believe ever that if you waved at a conductor, he wouldn't wave back. And you know, they all liked kids, and they all, you know, if they saw you, they'd give you a big wave. Or the trains used to come in the morning. We got 2 mail deliveries. I mean, unbelievable in that day and age. One in the morning and one at night. One at supper time, you know. And but the trains would come in and then go out in the afternoon, and another one would come in and go out. And when I got out of high school, I became a telephone operator. Yes. Number, please. Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the best jobs you could get financially. I don't know what I started with. I'm going to guess that maybe $15 a week. And when I told my dad, he said, "You're not worth it." He said, because I wasn't trained yet. I didn't even work. I just went to learn. And I think it maybe was a week or 10 days before they let me sit on. Then some supervisor would watch. But up to then, I in a sense, I worked because I was learning. But he just couldn't believe anyone would get paid and not do anything productive. And I worked there I always thought I wouldn't work after I got married, and because Bill didn't do too good on the work supports, I had to work for a while. And but I didn't work then. A little later, I stayed home with the kids. At the time that I worked at the telephone office, Lake Linden and Calumet were considered long distance, and if people called, you had to write a ticket for them and time it so that they would pay on their bill a call to Calumet. And Lake Linden was a dial. You dialed down to Lake Linden, and I always thought that was amazing that you could do that. Now it's all dial, or not now, it's not even dial, it's punch. Families had, and both Bill's family and mine, we never put the Christmas tree up until Christmas night after the kids were gone to bed. Both homes. And I never saw the Christmas tree at home until Christmas morning. And you know, we didn't get many presents, but the tree itself was a big, big thing to us. And so when we got married, we decided to do the same thing. And so Bill would march those kids around and have them hanging their stockings, and I keep saying, "Get him to bed, get him to bed. I got this to do yet." And so it was fun, you know. Then and the tree wouldn't even be at our house; it would be up at his mother's, and he'd have to go get it and bring it home and get it up and bring out the decorator and do that whole thing. No decorating in the house, nothing done until they went to bed. Oh, and my girls would go to the prom or anything. I met right toward the end of where my youngest one was going to be going to the prom, and then Louise was next to her, was going to something at Tech. I'll say that, not the Snowball, but some other fair. And I said to Bill, "Isn't it good? Neither one of them need a new gown, because we've got some upstairs they're going to wear." And the 2 girls were with me, and we were over in Hancock, and there was a little shop right near where the Hancock fire hall is, and we were going to go in there and just not even looking, and they both found gowns they wanted, and I came home with 2 new to prom gown and whatever she went to, that gown. And Bill said, what happened? I said, I don't know, we just thought these were the ones that... Well, I have to say that I lived for almost 50 years in the house up on Houghton Avenue. It's an old house, and it had cold floors because it was just earth floors in the basement, except where my washer was. That one had a cement floor. And so I never noticed really that my feet would be cold until I'd go to bed, and then I'd have to go run and heat up something to put my feet on after my husband died. Before that I could put them on. So for that reason, I'm happy I'm at the Douglas house because my feet are always warm here. It's just perfect. But after living there and having all these memories of that house, even though I can see it when I look out the window, I really didn't want to move, and it was tough to make it look like that. But I'm glad I did now, and I'm lucky I have a small kitchen and I can eat out. Well, I'm sure living around the family, I never heard any of my brothers swear. They're all older than me. I'm sure when they went outside somewhere and something didn't go right, you know, they were not any different than the other men, but you didn't in the house. It was just, and not that they didn't tease me or they didn't drive me crazy, but they were always, I don't want to even say they were gentlemen. They just, you know, you never heard them talk like that. That you even hear on the street now, they don't even know you, and they're starting to use words that you wish you never heard outside. I think that you learned from all of that, so that at our house, Bill would never ever swear in front of the kids. Not just the girls, but even the boys. I mean, it was just common language, a regular, normal, common language, and courtesy. And like today when Jack came and we went down, he took my jacket, I hung out a chair, pulled out the chair, you know, at one time I'd say, don't do that, I can do it. And he said, I know you can, I'm doing it. You know, so I think that carries over, and you just learn to respect other people, and you might not agree with them, but you respect them, and they can be whatever they are, and you know that somewhere they either learned that and that's how they are, you know. My advice would be to really hang on to your good friends. Don't ever think that because you're moving in another direction from them that you should let go. Always try to manage to have time, because they're the ones that know you best. And what you hear from some new person might not really be the truth. Your new one might say to you, hey, you got something hanging, a piece of lettuce hanging there or something. Someone that didn't know, they'd let everybody else see it before they'd even, or maybe would never tell you that. Or that you got something stuck in your tooth, you know. So my mother told me that. She said, she said, love stops when you stop caring. And that doesn't mean taking care of, it means caring. You care who you're married to, or you're in love with. You care what they're doing. You care that they shouldn't be doing something. And friendship stops when you stop sharing. So you really should share your things with people that you trust, and then always at least keep in touch with a card or a phone call. And today, phone calls are so easy. When my oldest daughter went to college, she would call home. I'd say, what do you need? What's up? You know, I can't afford a phone call. You couldn't. You know, and for that, I'm really sorry, but she did understand. I hope they laugh, because I laugh constantly. That's why I wouldn't let Jack sit around. He'd have been over here.